of this. Also, sort of the history of the transformation of the subject itself. I mean, Chase, when you're talking about, beginning your life and your careers to some extent as a writer at a time when you could drink the water, right? And nature was not only not severely compromised, but also was just profoundly bigger than us, right? I mean, there was not evidence in 1950 that we were bigger than this thing that we are in.
Right.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of your poems, and yours as well as you move forward in time, incorporate the idea that we are now the dominant element. Even if there are nature elements, it's often poking through a crack in the sidewalk, or it's a rat or a mouse in a big urban space rather than something. And I think one of the things that I do like about some traditional nature poetry is that it does take you back to a moment and a space where we are an infinitesimal element, just factually, not because of some poetic sensibility, but you really are in a landscape where you do not matter, and where you are eclipsed by it that's beyond you. And I think this is such an interesting moment for writing and thinking about the natural world, that we have seen this journey, or become aware of this journey in a single lifetime. Where before we were inconsequential in a beautiful way, and now we are profoundly consequential in a really troubling and as yet unresolved way. And the conversation between you sort of spoke to that continuum.
That's kind of the idea that Russell was talking about, this idea that nature is so huge. That's an American idea of the wilderness. Because if you look, I mean, I had to look it up because there was this book I read in college so many years ago that made a huge impression on me, which I thought was called The City and the Country, but it's called The Country and the City. It's out on Amazon. And it looks at English poetry of the pastoral, right? Pastoral is not wilderness, it's farm country. And the great thing about the book is it shows that just when people were writing these wonderful paeans to country life was the time that they were doing the enclosure movement and depriving farmers of the commons. And they were creating these enormous estates, beautiful lakes, and wonderful groves of trees in little Grecian ruins. That same moment when they were exalting the wonders of nature was when they were doing this. So, it's an American notion in a way of the giganticness of this wilderness, which in fact wasn't so much a wilderness to people who were living there first. It's not that nature isn't gigantic, right? But that most people have lived in some kind of relationship with nature in which they were constantly part of it and using it, and it wasn't a thing there.
I think that a lot of the nature writers who I enjoyed, who are in this sort of more primitive state, though, are not necessarily American. I mean, and they were responding to a world where